In this tutorial, we will expand on our agent action with a getAllInsuranceAgents method from our previous lecture, and we will create another method that will get a single insurance agent so that we can display the selected insurance agent in a JSP input form for the purpose of updating the agent profile information. This will be the first in a two-part series. For my YouTube students, there will be a link in the description to my Udemy course where you will be able to download the source code for all the examples. These are the high-level steps we will do to get a single read insurance agent method into our Struts 2 insurance administration application. First, we will reuse our created project, CRUD5. Then we will revisit our MariaDB table creation scripts for agent and state and alter the tables so that the primary keys will be automatically incremented by the database on a new insert into the tables. We will add a new state object model and include it as a property of our insurance agent model object, and we will add new service methods to get all these states from the database. We will also add new methods to get a single state and a single insurance agent to our service, and we will test our coding logic with our main method test driver. Okay, so here we are back in Eclipse. So we will start by reusing our CRUD5 project. So we'll copy it to a new one. We'll call it CRUD6. Then we will search and replace all the files to replace the CRUD5 name with the CRUD6 name. That should do it, and now we can do a Maven update and a Maven clean package. Looks like it compiled successfully, so now we can run it. And that looks like everything is still running as it should be. So our aim now is to fix our assets, text assets, and add a edit button somewhere in here so that you can select any one of these agents and update their details. First, let's look at updating these text properties with actual property values. So we'll go to Pulse main resources and in package properties, and we'll put all of our property values in here. Let's see if we pick it up now. Doesn't look like we pick up list agents or any of the others. So looking at the console logging output, we can see that it is not picking up the key values as we have defined in our property files. So it's not finding the properties. So why would that be? Everything is just supposed to work automatically, but it does not, which in the modern Java framework development often means that we have not configured something correctly, which is indeed the case here. So let's see what the problem is. When we define a property file, it needs to be in the same package as what we have defined in Struts. And if we look at our package resources directory structure, we are missing the com directory. So let's fix that with the help of Eclipse. We'll create a com Nicor Designs insurance package inside the resources. And we'll move the properties file over there. So let's do a Maven update and a Maven clean package and run it again. Now this immediately looks better. We get the text value. And here we can see now we pick up all the property values from the property file. So we can delete this directory. Okay, now that we've got everything in a sort of working state, it is time to go back to our database tables of insurance state or insurance province and insurance agent in our MariaDB. Here we will change our table primary keys to auto increment so that the database will manage the key creation for us, and also so that the database will enforce the foreign key relationships between insurance agent and insurance state. So as we can see here, we've got state ID as decimal, and we create an index down here, and we have defined it as a primary key. So we are going to change this to auto increment, and because of that we will no longer be using a decimal key value. We will be using a medium int value and specify not null auto increment in our database script. So let's go ahead and rerun this full script. First, let's just try to drop the index and the table. And we have a problem here with cannot delete or update parent row. A foreign key constraint fails, which means there's still an enforcement of the foreign key from our insurance agent table. So let's go and have a look at that creation script. So here we have the foreign key creation that refers to our state table. Actually, this is the full foreign key creation, but here it's the dropping. So we're going to have to basically drop this table as well. So now we've dropped the index of the agents and we've dropped the foreign key of the agents. So we'll go back to the create states SQL script and we'll drop the states index and the table. Execute selected text. And now we were successful in dropping our foreign key. So now we can run the creation part with our new auto increment state ID. So our creation succeeded, and of course there should now be no entries. We don't see any entries in our table. So now we can go back to our population or seeding of the states. And since the state ID is now an auto increment key, we don't have to insert these values. So let's remove them. So let's rerun our insertion script where the database is supposed to insert the primary key values. Looks like all these scripts succeeded, so we can go back to our state creation script and run this again. And here we see the primary key that's been auto increment inserted for us by the database itself. So now we can go back to our insurance agent creation code, and here we can also change our agent ID to an auto increment primary key. So we'll do this, and now we are ready to rerun the entire script again to recreate our insurance agents table. So the alter table failed, The drop foreign key failed, table drop succeeded, table creation succeeded, index creation succeeded, foreign key constraint is incorrectly formed. And of course here it says our agent state ID is still a decimal, so we'll have to change that to be able to match up with our new medium int foreign key in state. Now let's try and rerun the whole script end to end. This looks better, only the foreign key dropped failed. So if we run it end to end again, everything should succeed. There we have now created the whole structure with the foreign key of state ID. And of course now we need to go back and repopulate our insurance agents and make use of the new auto increment agent ID. Let's execute all these inserts. Of course, we have to take out the agent ID as well. That looks good. Looks like all the inserts succeeded. And now we can go back and run our select statement. And here we see the agent IDs created with our auto increment primary key. So now we've created the new agent object and state object relationship in the database, so we can go back and update our insurance admin model. First we'll add the state object. I'll just paste it in. And this is our new state object that matches the state table with a state ID of integer. So the next step is to include the state object in the agent object. Now previously we only had the state ID, and since we changed from a decimal to a medium int, we can start by changing this to an integer so that it matches up with our integer in state ID. Now we can actually add the state object model. We'll create getters and setters, and we will also update our constructors. We will leave this constructor as is with the state ID as an integer, but we will create a new one that will also create the state object for us and the relationship. So as you can see here, we pass in the state and we can set the state value. We can probably also recreate our toString as well. This is our new toString, which will include the state. And now immediately we see there is some errors in our service layer, and that is also because we changed from a big decimal to an integer. But now since we are here, we need to update our interface so that the agent will actually include the state objects. And for that reason, we actually need a getState method. So let's go ahead and add those methods to our agent service interface. So we'll add 3 new methods to our interface and add them to our implementation. And now we're ready to fill in the code. Let's start with the getState. We do a select from states where the state ID is the value we pass in. We call our JDBC template and get the rows back, which in our case will be only 1 row if we are lucky and we have that state ID in there. So we'll go ahead and populate a new state object and add it to our state list, and then we will return that single row as a state object. Now, using more or less the same logic, we'll fill in our getAllStates method. Here we simply select all the states, pass in the query to our JDBC template, populate a list of states, and return the list. So what remains now is our single getAgent and our update of getAllAgents to actually include the state object. So first let's do the getAgent code logic. So I'll paste in the getAgent code. Here we select single insurance where the agent ID is equal to the input parameter. We send it into our JDBC template and we get rows back. And if we're lucky, we'll get a single row back. And then here is the important extra code. We call agent setState, and here we call our previous getState method that we created so that we get the state object back. This is the getState. So when we return this agent at position 0 in the row, it contains a state object. Some other interesting code here in this debugging is we have the active yes or no string value, where we set the value depending on what value we get back from the database. And so now we basically also have to update our previous getAllAgents with this code. We'll just add the extra line in here. And this means we will get a list of agents that all include their own state object as populated in the database. Now we're getting to our final step of part 1, and we'll go back to our main method test driver, and we'll expand our main method in order to test the 3 new methods and the existing one. So first let's add a test that tests our getAllStates. This should call getAllStates and iterate through state list. Let's run it. We run it as a Java application. We have an integer class cast exception. Hopefully this will fix our class cast exception. This looks much better. Let's see if we get all the agents. We do indeed get all the agents, and it also includes the states. Now let's go back to our interface. We are testing getAllAgents, getAllStates, and we can now test getAgent and getState. Well, in a way we've already tested getState because we are seeing our state values populated. So let's add a getAgent test. Here we specifically will be getting agent at index ID number 3. And here we are getting the full agent at index number 3. Another test we can add to our test driver is simply creating an agent for the purpose of having it ready before inserting it. And this will be the code for creating an agent. And we'll create an agent named Nick C. Zombie, and he lives in Walking Deadville, Atlanta. And we'll just print out the agent. And here is the agent that we've just created. We haven't updated it in the database. And that concludes part 1 of our Get Insurance Agent tutorial.